I'd like to start out by, I'm Gary Sukanek. I'm the chairman of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee. I'd like to start out by recognizing some state and local officials who are in attendance today. First of all, Columbiana County Commissioner Tim Weigel, Lordstown Mayor Arno Hill, Christine Wagner of ODOT's Office of Jobs and Commerce, and Mahoning County Republican Chair Mark Monroe. And last but not least, I'd like to also recognize all the other members of the Governmental Affairs Committee. Would they stand to be recognized? And now I have the pleasure of introducing Greg Smith, president of Comco Industries out of Columbiana, and they are today's sponsor. Greg has a couple of comments, welcoming remarks.
How's everybody doing? Good? You know, I just learned the other day that there's three things the human brain needs. It needs oxygen, which is simple, you know, we breathe. It needs food, which is easy, we just partake in that. And it also needs relationships. You know, before PETA took over the earth, they did an experiment with a monkey where they put a monkey in a cage and they flashed lights and played loud music and scared the heck out of the monkey. And they took a blood sample and they found what the stress level was. And then they opened the cage door back up and put the monkey's buddy in there. And they did the same thing with the stress and the lights and the flashing. And they took a blood sample and found out the stress level was cut in half. So my question to you is, who's your monkey? So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to sponsor the event.
Thank you, Greg, for those words of wisdom. And we appreciate Comco's support not only of today's event, but all of your contributions to the economic vitality of the Mahoning Valley. Next, I'd like to recognize some visitors from Siemens Corporation. Earlier today, officials from Siemens Corporation made a multi-million-dollar donation of software to YSU. And multi-million sounds like a lot. And then I heard the number $440 million, and I had to have that repeated. I mean, I'm talking $500 million. That software will be used at YSU for the STEM students at YSU to learn about advanced manufacturing and other high-tech jobs, not only for today but in the future. We're particularly proud to have the president of Siemens Corporation here, Eric Spiegel. Eric? And Eric wasn't talking with an accent, you know, and I found out he's a native, actually, of the Valley and a graduate of Poland Seminary High School. So, welcome back. Also with us from Siemens Corporation, we have Helmuth Ludwig, who is the CEO of Siemens Industrial Technology North America. And Ulis King, who's Director of Global Community Relations and GOPLM Programs for Siemens PLM software. Also, Jim Menango, who is the VP of America's Strategic Alliances for Siemens PLM software. Welcome, Jim. And before I introduce our guest speaker, Congressman Bill Johnson, I'd like to remind everybody we will take questions at the end of today's presentation. You should have note cards at your tables. Please write any questions you have on those note cards, and then we'll have staff come around and collect them just prior to our Q&A period. As I've said, today's speaker is Congressman Bill Johnson. Bill is serving his second two-year term as Congressman for the 6th District in Ohio. We were talking about that at the table. It looks like a snake on the map. It goes along the Ohio River, but it starts in southern Mahoning County, so he's got part of Mahoning County and all of Columbiana counties, and then a lot further down along the river. The Congressman has a very varied career, which began when he joined the U.S. Air Force in 1973. And then he retired 26 years later. A lot happened in between, and I know he acquired a lot of IT knowledge along the way. But he retired as a lieutenant colonel, and when he retired, he co-founded a company called Johnson & Schley Management Group. And one thing I learned about them was that within a 3-year period under the Congressman's leadership, they had a 200% increase in revenues. In 2003, he left Johnson Schley and formed J2 Business Solutions. It was a company that focused on executive-level IT support as a government contractor to the U.S. military. Between 2006 and 2010, the Congressman was the Chief Information Officer of a global manufacturer dealing in highly engineered electrical components to a transportation industry headquartered in the Mahoning Valley. He was elected to his first term in 2010 and was reelected in 2012. And the Congressman was recently appointed to the House Energy and Commerce Committee and also serves on its subcommittee on Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade. The Congressman also serves on a subcommittee on Environment and Economy and one on Oversight and Investigations. Today, the Congressman will talk about the energy policy and its effect on the future of manufacturing. Please welcome Congressman Bill Johnson.
Well, thank you very much. It's always good to be here with you at the Chamber. Tom, the Government Affairs, Government Relations Committee, thank you so much for asking me to be here today. I'm actually in the market for a new monkey. Does anybody have one? You know, Eric, I learned this morning that you were an offensive tackle for YSU. I mean, you guys can see by the size of him that he certainly qualifies. I think that if I ever play football, I'd like you to block for me because I'm a real little guy. But if I ever get in a bar fight, I'd like you to go along with me also. You know, we talk about energy, we talk about manufacturing, we talk about energy policy. We hear the terms energy independence and energy security. We hear those terms a lot, but what do they really mean? What do they mean to the American people? What do they mean to you as individuals? What does it mean, and how does it affect the conversations that you have around your dinner table? That's the question that America is beginning to grapple with. I will tell you that right now we don't have an American energy policy. That's part of the problem. But we need one, and we need one desperately. To answer the questions about what it means to you and about what it means to the American people, I need to take you back to set the stage just a little bit. And I sort of got on this line of thinking when I saw the video that the Siemens folks played today at the grant announcement. I need to take you back to a presentation that I heard right after I went to Washington for the people of the 6th District of Ohio. It was March of 2011, and the Prime Minister of Australia spoke to a joint session of Congress. The Senate was there, the House of Representatives were there, many of the president's senior cabinet members were there. And she started off her speech saying this. She said, "You know, I remember being a young girl, sitting on the floor of my living room, watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin land on the moon, thinking to myself, wow, those Americans can do anything." She went on to talk about how Australia and America had stood side by side to address many of the world's problems, how America had actually stood in front of Australia to protect her in the Pacific during World War II. She ended her speech with a similar comment. She said, "You know, I'm not that young girl anymore. Today I'm the Prime Minister of our country and I have a lot of experience under my belt. And yet today I still believe that Americans can do anything." And when she said that the second time with such passion and conviction, you could almost hear a pin drop in the House chamber. I mean, it was quiet as a mouse. It was almost like everybody took a cleansing breath at one time. We soaked in those words, Americans can do anything. The idea of innovation, the idea of American exceptionalism. It wasn't that we don't believe it, but we certainly don't hear it enough, and we're not teaching it to our young people, to future generations. So you're saying, well, what does the space program have to do with the talk about energy policy? Well, here's the connection. Because the Prime Minister's comments got me to thinking, what industry is more prepared than the energy industry to put American exceptionalism back in play? What industry is more prepared to create jobs and produce American prosperity and innovation than the energy industry? When John Kennedy launched us on that goal to go to the moon in 10 years, he engaged every fabric of our society, our economic will, our political will, our military, our academic communities, our scientific community. Everybody was behind this. We sat in wide-eyed amazement every time there was a space shot. If you didn't have a television in your grade school, they would send you home. It was like a national holiday, so you could watch it from home. As we sat in front of our television and watched Walter Cronkite give us the play-by-play on each and every aspect of every mission. We were captivated by this. And we saw not but the probably most innovative period in American history. The cell phone you carry in your pocket, the flat screen TV that you've got at home, the GPS that's in your car, even non-invasive arthroscopic surgery that was developed so that we could protect space travelers in a zero-gravity environment. I mean, there's some things you don't want floating around the cockpit, so you don't open people up in outer space. Those kinds of technologies came out of the space race. Think about what would happen if we had a national energy policy that went something like this. Starting today, we're setting a goal to become energy independent and secure in America by the year 2020. We're going to mine the vast coal resources that we have. Coal has fueled our energy needs and our energy wheels of innovation for generations, and we've got enough of that resource for future generations as well. And we can learn how to mine it safely and use it environmentally soundly. We're going to expand our nuclear footprint. It's the cleanest, safest form of energy on the planet. We're going to harvest the vast resources of coal, of oil and natural gas. We now know that both onshore and offshore, we have more of that resource than any nation on the planet. And we're even going to embrace alternative forms of energy like wind and solar and biofuels. They can't meet our heavy lifting energy needs today, but they have a place in our overall energy profile. But what we're not going to do is sit idly by on the sidelines and watch nations like China and Russia and others surpass us, not only in innovation, but in energy security. And we're not going to be beholden to countries like Saudi Arabia and others, some of which don't like us very much, for our energy resources. And we're going to back that energy policy up with regulatory reform that says, starting today, regulatory agencies like the EPA and the Department of the Interior, the Army Corps of Engineers and others, they're going to become partners in progress with America's industries and businesses. If there's a reason to say no to a particular project, then say no. But don't let no be the final answer. The American people have a reasonable expectation that those agencies are put in place to move the ball forward, not to simply be barriers and hold us back. We were talking about hydraulic fracturing here at the table just a few minutes ago. I mean, for goodness sakes, how much is enough? We've been doing hydraulic fracturing for over 60 years, over 1 million such operations. Not once has there been a proven instance where it has contaminated the water table, and yet you still have those that are crying and screaming to the top of their lungs that it's unsafe and that we should not be doing it. It's a proven technology. We should be going after it. I submit to you that if we had an energy policy like that, just like what happened when John Kennedy sent us on that moon mission, we would see industries crop up overnight as new energy technologies emerged. We would see millions of jobs created. We would see young people lining up to get into degree programs that would prepare them for careers in energy. And at the end of the day, we would learn how to produce and store, distribute, and even use energy in ways that we've never even imagined. Because just like the Prime Minister of Australia, I still believe that Americans can do anything, and I don't believe that everything that can be discovered has been discovered. We are the land of opportunity. We were built on the concepts of innovation and exceptionalism. All we've got to do is give the American people and businesses like Siemens and V&M Star and the oil and gas industry and all the manufacturing companies that will come as a result of that. All we've got to do is give them the opportunity and the tools, and they'll take us to the next level. Do you have any idea how long this energy era of prosperity is projected to last here in eastern and southeastern Ohio? It's not 10 years. It's not even 30 years. Experts are telling us today that because of advances in technologies that are being produced with tools like product lifecycle management, like Siemens is bringing to the table, that we are finding out how to get to much more of that resource, and we're finding out now that we can get to as much as 2/3 more than what we thought was down there. We're talking about an 80 or 100-year journey of prosperity for our region. We haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what's coming. I tell people oftentimes, I'm going to be looking at this from the south side of dirt by the time it reaches its peak. That's a little morbid, but it makes the point. And let me tell you why it's important to the American people. And let me do that with an example, and then we'll open it up for questions. Some of you may remember another manufacturing evolution back in the 90s when cell phones first came on the horizon. There was a segment of the American market that the cell phone vendors could not penetrate. It was working moms. They could not get working moms to buy cell phones to save their lives. They went out with a survey and conducted polls, and they asked working moms, they said, what would it take for you to buy a cell phone? They got all kinds of feedback. Well, it's got to be cost affordable. It's got to fit in my purse. It's got to have a light on it so I can see it at night. It's got to have different color options so it matches my shoes. Good cell phone coverage, those kinds of things. Well, the cell phone companies went back out. They made the changes. They ran some new ads. And they re-entered the market. Guess what sales did? They did not go up. They were dumbfounded because they still hadn't gotten to the heartbeat of why working moms work in the first place. Why do working moms work? Working moms work to either augment a single income that's not enough to make ends meet, or to do some of the things that they want to be able to do. Or maybe they're single moms, and we have a growing number of those in America. And so it was AT&T that broke the code. And they came out with an ad that went something like this. It showed a working mom coming out of the bedroom. She's putting on her eyeshadow with one hand. She's slipping on her left high heel with the other hand. She's stuffing stuff in her satchel. She's walking into the kitchen where she has a high schooler, middle schooler, and a preschooler daughters all sitting around the table. She's slinging toast and Eggo muffins and pouring juice and milk. And the kids are complaining, Mom, why do you have to go to work? She said, I have to go to work. I go to work every day. You know that. The babysitter walks in and she says, she kind of stands off in the back. She said, I don't want to have anything to do with this mess. She gets ready to walk out the door, and the youngest one stops her at the door and kind of blocks the door and says, Mom, why do we never get to do anything as a family anymore? And she stops cold. She looks out the window, ponders for a moment, and she says, you got 5 minutes to get ready to go to the beach or I'm going by myself. Then it shows the girls getting their swimmies on, their goggles, their sand buckets and their shovels, and then it pans to the beach. She's sitting in a lounger. The kids are playing in the surf, making sand castles. You've never seen a cell phone, and you've never seen an AT&T symbol. And all of a sudden, a phone rings. She reaches inside of her purse and she pulls it out, and she says something like this, yeah, Tom. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what we need to do. Yeah, you can call me back here if you have any problems. You can reach me anytime. And what was the message? The message was she could take her job and her career with her and not have to sacrifice her family in the process. Cell phone sales to working moms went through the roof. What does this have to do with energy policy and manufacturing? I tell this to energy companies everywhere I speak. And they're getting the message, by the way. I'm speaking to another group next weekend over in Pennsylvania. I'll be telling them the same thing. We've got to make energy independence and security relevant around the dining room table. We talk about energy independence by talking about hydraulic fracturing, drilling, injection wells, pipelines. That's stuff. That's like an IT guy talking about information technology and bits and bytes and megahertz and megabytes and those kinds of things. If you can't make it real, if you can't make it so that people understand how it affects them, they're not going to buy it. Consider that AT&T advertisement, and let me give you a parody. What if we saw an advertisement that looked something like this? A dry cereal manufacturer, it could be Kellogg's, it could be General Mills, it could be Quaker, who knows, Could be brand X. And you see dry cereal boxes going down the assembly line and the workers are working it. Quickly pans to the boardroom and you see the graphs of the financials and the strategic planning all over the wall. And the Eric Spiegels of that company stand up and say, you know, because of increased domestic energy production in America and because of energy independence and security here, we're paying less to power our manufacturing operations. And we're able to pass those savings on to our customers. This is a good day for our company. Then it pans to the loading dock, and as those cereal boxes are being loaded on 18-wheel trucks, you see two semi-tractor trailer truck drivers saying, hey, my truck runs on natural gas. I'm paying less to fuel my truck. So I'm able to pass those savings on to my customers. And the other guy says, well, I'm paying less for diesel fuel too. And it's more cost effective for me. I can take on more customers and I can pass on my savings. Then you see a mom with 3 kids in the car pulling up at a service station. She reaches for the handle to fill up her car, and just as she does, the attendant rolls 10 cents off of the price of gas. And of course she likes that and they exchange a nice smile. The next scene, quickly, it jumps to the supermarket. And she's going down the aisle with the 3 kids, grocery cart full, and she's looking at her calculator and she's looking at the cereal and she finds that box of cereal. She looks at her calculator, she grabs the box of cereal, she puts it in her cart. About that time, here comes the kids around the corner. Mom, can we have ice cream today? You never let us buy ice cream. She looks back at her calculator again and she says, you know, today we can buy ice cream. Let's get ice cream. You've just made energy independence and security real to her around the table. You could have the same scenario where you've got a high schooler. Mom and Dad, how am I going to go to college? A dinner table discussion. The table stacked up with bills. And have the mom or the dad say, you know something? We're paying for less gas at the pumps. We're paying less to heat and cool the house. My employer's able to pay me more because they've reduced their operating costs, all because of American energy independence. We've got more money in our pocket. I think we can start that college fund. So don't give up hope about going to college. That's how you make energy independence and security real to the American people. Folks, when manufacturers, through innovative concepts like the Siemens folks are bringing to the table, when they realize that they can combine that kind of technology with an affordable, reliable, nearly boundless source of energy that lies underneath our feet here along the Ohio River, manufacturing is going to come back to our region in a big, big way. We are the land of opportunity. We are the land of American exceptionalism. We will begin to manufacture new products and new technologies. And the horizon is now the present because it's coming. I believe that with all my heart. You've got an exciting journey. We together have an exciting journey that has just barely begun. My job is to try and create a business environment through regulatory reform, getting the EPA, the bureaucracies in Washington to become partners in progress, tax reform so that all businesses and all Americans get to keep more of what they earn so that they can invest into research and development and pour more money into growing and expanding their business and developing new products. And that's what I fight for every single day that I'm in Washington on your behalf. So, folks, I tell you, it makes my skin tingle thinking about what is happening. This type of energy vision, it is a job-creating energy vision. It is a vision that puts the American dream back into play for millions of Americans who have long ago given up hope, thinking that it doesn't apply to them anymore. It's coming. So get your running shoes on. It's going to be a fun journey. Thanks so very much. Let's open it up for questions. Before he starts asking questions, I do not work at the IRS.
Investigations and... Okay, the first question is, how do you increase supply when the oil companies stop drilling every time the price goes down due to increased supply?
You open it up to world markets. I should have mentioned that. Thanks for asking that question. Just 2 weeks ago, the Energy Department, at the urging of myself and Congressman Tim Ryan, in collaboration with over 100 of our colleagues, have agreed to approve the first permit in over 2 years to export liquid natural gas. We have more of that resource than any country in the world does. And yet we're sitting on the sidelines of a world market that Russia is taking advantage of, countries like Australia, others, China, Japan, for example. Japan is abandoning their nuclear power infrastructure for obvious reasons. You all remember the tsunami and what happened. They want to go to natural gas power plants. They want to buy that from us. Why do we want them to buy it from Russia or from some other country? The Department of Energy has done studies, and we've seen very clearly that the world market is up here around $13. The American market is down around $3. Initially, manufacturers were concerned that if natural gas were to emerge here in America at the price that the world market is, that they couldn't afford this raw material that they need for their chemical manufacturing and others. But that's not true. Studies have shown that by opening up the demand to the world market, we'll see a minimum influence and increase in the price of natural gas here in America. So one concept, of course, is to open it up to a global market, and that's what we're trying hard to get them to do.
Next question, how do you reverse the anti-coal sentiment in Washington?
Well, it's going to take a change out of some people, for one. That goes without saying. But do you realize that we stopped investing in clean coal technology back in the 40s and 50s when we found out that we could buy our energy overseas cheaper than we could invest in clean coal technology here at home? Remember what I said. Americans can do anything. We can solve the coal issue. We can learn how to use that resource responsibly and environmentally soundly. We were talking just a few minutes ago. If we had been as risk averse and regulatory constrained in the 60s as we are today, we would have never, ever made it to the moon. When the tragedy occurred in the Apollo series of flights, when Roger Chaffee and Gus Grissom and Ed White were killed on the launch pad, we would have abandoned the space program. The naysayers would have said it's unsafe, we can't do this, we shouldn't do this. And keep in mind, we didn't know how to do this when President Kennedy said we're going to the moon in 10 years. We had to learn how to do this. We didn't know how to bring back a broken spaceship with Apollo 13. We had 3 men sitting out there destined to die, and yet we figured out how to bring them back home with duct tape and socks and what they had on board. We can solve these problems, and when the American people realize that this war on fossil fuels, and by the way, it's not just an anti-coal sentiment, it's an anti-fossil fuel sentiment. And we live in the region here that has a wealth of not only coal resources, but we've talked about the Marcellus and the Utica and the vast oil and gas resources we have. If you don't think that they're not coming after oil and gas next, you're sadly mistaken. The EPA is already conducting studies on hydraulic fracturing. What do they need to study, for crying out loud? Experience has already conducted the study, and we've done it safely. So it's going to take a change in some people in Washington, but it's going to take the American people understanding what energy independence and security mean, and that sometimes the reward is worth the risk. Americans have never been afraid to put life on the line when it means major advances for the American people. That's the legacy of our nation, and we should allow our people to continue to do that.
When are we going to begin to repair our ailing infrastructure?
Today. You know, there's a lot of things that the federal government shouldn't be doing. We got a $17 trillion debt. You know, it used to be, and I am often condemned by people who don't understand this. I mean, their concerns are legitimate, but it used to be that senators and congressmen could just introduce an amendment and put several $100 million on the end of a budget bill or on the end of a transportation bill and bring home pet projects like John Murtha's Airport over in Pennsylvania that has one flight a day. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent. I heard the horror stories of a transportation bill that had more earmarks, 6,000 earmarks, and most of the bill was earmarks. Very little of it was transportation and infrastructure. We've got a spending problem, and so we have to manage that. But do we do it at the risk of not handling the infrastructure needs? Absolutely not. I've actually collaborated with and joined as an original co-sponsor, believe it or not, with a Democrat colleague from Maryland. He's a new guy. He's a member of the freshman class that came in this term, John Delaney. And John came up with this neat idea. He said, why don't we create a public-private partnership? And here's how it goes. Eric, you might want to think about this one, because if it passes, it's going to be an opportunity for big companies. Sell government stock, government bonds to companies that can afford it at a reasonable rate. They're going to lose money immediately on the price of those bonds. So that's a going-in calculation that they make. But for every dollar that they invest in those government bonds for this particular specific purpose, they get to bring back, repatriate $4 from overseas tax-free. Right now it's 35%. So by the time they lose money on the stock and the bonds that they buy, and they get that really good tax-free rate with repatriation, at the end of the day, and I'm not a financial expert by any stretch of the imagination, but this makes common sense to me. I understand interest rates. By the time it's all done, they wind up paying an effective 7 or 8% on the money that they bring back. And the money that they've invested into these specific bonds, the design is to create about a $50 billion infrastructure fund designed specifically to fund infrastructure projects. The money would be distributed by a board that's comprised of X number of the top companies that invest in this from the private sector, and then some number of representatives chosen by the National Governors Association, because you would want to make sure that that infrastructure fund doesn't just go out to fund pet projects in the states where the companies come from or where those governors come from. And then you would have some number of board members that might be elected officials in Washington, either from the Senate or the House, that would serve as some kind of oversight of this fund to make sure that it's distributed fairly. So this is getting a lot of play, and to our amazement, it has been embraced by House Ways and Means. And we're looking for creative ways to overcome the no earmark, no government spending, and let private companies both benefit and contribute into helping get our infrastructure back up. Because here in eastern and southeastern Ohio, this is a question that I get a lot, because we've got thousands of truckloads of water and oil and gas and steel going across our roadways. And I can tell you, they take a pounding. And so bridges, roads, telecommunications infrastructure, and I know that's probably not what the question referred to. I laughed recently when one of the big telecommunication companies came in to see me, or actually it was the National Association, and they said, Ohio is a leading state. We've got 98% coverage with broadband internet connectivity in the state of Ohio. And I just looked at them. I wasn't smiling, and they were wondering why. I said, you know where the 2% is? That's my district. We've still got lots of Appalachia, Ohio, that doesn't have access to broadband internet. You're talking about STEM and education for our young people. How do you educate young people today without access to the internet? This is 2013. You've got to be able to Google and Yahoo and tweet and Facebook and do research. Got to have it.
What do you think will happen on the federal level regarding efforts to allow exporting of liquid natural gas?
It's going to happen. I think I've already answered that one, so don't let me spend any more time on it. We are going to continue to push it. The group of over 100 of our colleagues that Congressman Ryan and I were able to get to sign on board to this letter. We included the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Fred Upton from Michigan, and the committee chairman on natural resources from Washington, Doc Hastings. In addition to that, Tim and I have started a liquid natural gas working group. Somebody said, well, why didn't you start an LNG caucus? Do you know how many caucuses there are in Washington? My name is on so many caucuses, I can't even give you the list. Do you know how many caucus meetings I've actually been to? I think 2 in 2.5 years. We wanted a working group, a group that was really going to take seriously this issue and work the problem. And so last week, or 2 weeks ago, when the Energy Department approved the first liquid natural gas export permit in over 2 years, our working group immediately issued a press statement and sent a letter saying, hey, what about the rest of the permits? You know, let's don't trickle this along. Let's let the market drive this, because the American people know how to do this better than we do here sitting in the ivory towers in Washington, D.C. So let's move on with it. And we're going to keep applying that pressure. So it's going to happen.
Okay, here's a little different twist. Government employees under the sequester are being furloughed for 12 days, taken a day at a time. Now the latest word is these furloughed employees will be eligible for unemployment benefits. How is it that when Joe Bag of Rocks has a 2-week waiting period before he can apply for unemployment?
Well, I'll have to do some research into that because I don't know that that's not just simply a rumor. I'll have to look into that. I don't know that that is true, but I will find out. So, but let me say this. I spent 26 and a half years in the United States Air Force at every rank, from Airman Basic with no rank on my sleeves to Lieutenant Colonel, and I was the Director of the Chief Information Officer Staff at U.S. Special Operations Command, responsible for billions of dollars in projects, commanded the Air Force's largest communications unit in the world at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. There was not one year that I can ever remember in my 26 and a half years that we weren't told, you got to do more with less. Either less people, less budget, less resources. I must have come from a different era. Not once did it ever occur to us that mission failure or pulling back on our mission responsibilities was an option. We still had to get the job done. You didn't hear us complain about it. We didn't put the people that did the work at risk. We found a way to make it happen. Sequestration is a dirty word these days to the American people because it's been categorized that way. Sequestration did not have to happen. We passed legislation twice to give the administration the capability to put in responsible spending cuts so that sequestration did not have to happen. They have the flexibility today to make many of the decisions contrary to the ones that you're hearing about in the press. The furloughing of air traffic controllers that had so many of our flights delayed, many of them canceled. Folks, the FAA always had the flexibility to program funds and to move resources around to prevent that from happening. Sequestration, as far as I know, only happened one other time in our nation's history, at least in my lifetime, and that was in 1986 under the Reagan administration. Do you remember the relationship that Ronald Reagan had with the air traffic controllers? Even in those days, the FAA did not use the American people as pawns and put our commerce and our transportation network at a standstill to make a political statement. I think that's all I better say about that.
Okay, this will be the last question. We'll go to the nuclear side. How can you say that nuclear power is safe and clean and cost-effective when Congress can't agree on how to dispose of nuclear waste?
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. And it's a debate that has been going on for a very, very long time. Do we recycle it? How do we dispose of it? The debate over Yucca Mountain and how to handle nuclear waste, I'm not going to deny to you, is a complex issue. I'll just simply revert back to what I said earlier. We can solve these kinds of problems. We simply need to put the brain power of the American people without the constraints of a federal government standing and looking over their shoulder and criticizing and blocking everything that we try to do. Should we do it environmentally soundly? Yes. Should we do it safely? Yes. But we can solve these problems if we can get a federal bureaucracy that's collaborative and partners in progress rather than barriers. So we'll solve it.
Thank you, Congressman, for your time, your insight, and your confidence in the Valley. I believe that your suggested proclamation that America be a energy independent country could be as meaningful and significant as the proclamation made by President Kennedy in the 60s that we land a man on the moon. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it over to, we all know this guy doesn't need an introduction, Tom Humphreys, President and CEO of the Regional Chamber, for closing comments.
Thanks, Gary. Good job. Thank you. You know, sitting here today, listening to the Congressman, a lot goes through your mind, and if there was enough time, I was going to get a chance to get up and say something at the end, which I'm really pleased that I have that chance to do that. And I'll tell you why. Congressman was elected in 2010, and the man is a study of his work. And for about 3 or 4 years before he actually ran for Congress, he and I connected. And every 3 or 4 months, we would talk about what's going on in the region. And although the Congressman, I don't think you were born and raised here, but you would never know it because he really studied our area. He knows who we are, how we act, how we work, what our beliefs are, and he's very, very focused. And it's not surprising that he's sitting in the job that he has today. And I think he demonstrated to all of us today that he's very astute and very aware of what's going on. And I think we're very honored to have you serving on our behalf on a very critical time. And I agree with Gary, you painted a vision unlike we've heard in a long time. And I think we can all embrace it and support it, and we hope you continue that leadership. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming out to Canfield today. I think it was well worth it. And thanks again, Congressman, for your comments and your thought. Thank you. Have a good day.